Hey, I am so glad you're joining me on the Rise with Tori podcast. I'm your host, Tori, and on this podcast, we like to discuss health and wellness and living free from a faith-based perspective. So always trying to point back to Christ, even when we're talking about health and fitness. Today, I'm tackling the age-old question of cardio or strength training, which is better and why. But before we do, if you're enjoying these conversations, I just ask if you please subscribe and rate and review the podcast. If you're not enjoying them, then don't do that. No, I'm just kidding. But for real, if you have any suggestions or topics, please email me at torilynnfitness@gmail.com. And I always want to grow. I always want to get better. I always want to take your suggestions, topics, anything that you have in mind, and just put that to practice on future episodes. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. But before we do, I want to bring us to a scripture before we talk about cardio versus strength. So 1 Timothy 4:8 says, "For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come." So here Paul compares physical training for an athlete with spiritual training for godliness. So he's saying that, physical training, it is important. It is important to take care of our bodies, but it's less important than a godly life or living a godly life. And the reason being is that the physical will pass away. The physical won't last forever. But the spiritual will last. That is what goes on and on for eternity. Okay, so yes, it is important to take care of our bodies. So as we're going to talk about strength and cardio and taking care of our bodies and stewarding them well, right? Everything given to us by God, we want to steward well, whether it's our children, marriages, money, finances, our bodies, our health, what we're consuming. We want to take care of it, steward it well, because it is a gift from God and it is of some value. It is a value. It helps us get through this life and be able to pour out to people and serve people well. However, the spiritual component, spiritual training, being with Jesus, getting closer to God, working on our spiritual health, that is most important. So if you are taking care of your body but neglecting your spiritual well-being, I would challenge you to maybe lay that down. Maybe give it to God for a season, or maybe pull back a little bit and start to focus on that spiritual health first and foremost. Okay? All right. We had to cover that first before we jump into the discussion of cardio versus strength training. Okay, so first, what is cardio and what is strength training? So cardio, or better known as cardiovascular training, is an aerobic form of exercise that measures how well your body takes in oxygen and delivers it to your muscles during prolonged periods of movement. So for example, running, biking, swimming, dancing, walking, that is cardio or cardiovascular training. Think of it more as like steady state of your heart rate. You're not getting your heart rate up super high and maintaining it there. Although sometimes, we do if we're running or something, pushing ourselves a little bit. But think of it as more of like steady state training of your heart rate. Now, there are other forms of cardio or cardiovascular training, such as HIIT or interval training, high intensity interval training, plyometrics, but that's where it starts to get into anaerobic exercise. So we had aerobic, now we have anaerobic exercise, which uses a different form of energy. So I'm not going to get all technical and into the technical terms on that, but Anaerobic is where you will find strength training. That is where strength training is classified under anaerobic exercise. Anaerobic exercise doesn't use the oxygen in the body as its main source of energy. So in other words, it requires short, sudden bursts of energy through training. So think of aerobic exercise as like long, steady state, and anaerobic as short, quick burst. Okay. And you can break that down even more so, but we're just going to keep it simple and sweet for the time being. Okay. So let's break down the battle between the two. Which do you need in your training? Which is better, right? And so first, I want to say this. I want to say that any movement is good. Any movement is good. If you are getting out there and moving your body, you're doing it right. Okay, so please keep that in mind, especially if you're a beginner, you're just starting out. Please do not think, okay, I need to have this much of anaerobic and this much of aerobic. And if you are moving your body and you're enjoying what you're doing, because I think that's also key in that continuing to do movement, continuing to exercise, you have to enjoy it. Now, sometimes we are going to have to do things we don't enjoy, right? Just think about life in general. We're not always going to enjoy everything that we do in life. So that can be carried over into exercise too, is that sometimes we do have to press into hard places. We do have to do things that we don't want to do or that we don't enjoy very much. But for the most part, if you find a type of movement, a type of exercise that you're doing that you enjoy, stick to that. Something that you look forward to or that maybe your body can handle, okay? Just depending on your age, your ability, that your body can stick with, okay? So keep that in mind. Also, I want you to keep in mind, remember, we are all different. So what works for one person and is beneficial for someone may not always be the best for someone else. This is why I think it's so important to learn your body and know your own body. This goes same for what you eat too, in that sometimes people will eat a certain food that's good for you, but their body gets inflammation because their body does not agree with it. So I like to teach my clients, I like to say, pay attention to your body, listen to your body. God gave you cues and signals in your body, so pay attention. So if you're doing a certain movement and it does not feel good, pay attention to that. Or seek out a trusted trainer. Seek out someone to help you maybe get clarity on, why do I feel this pain? Why do I feel this way when I do a certain form of exercise? It could be that you have imbalances in your body. Something that I've been paying attention to a lot more as I've gotten older is certain areas of my body that have a little bit more pain than others and getting curious about it. Why, for example, why does my hip start to hurt a little bit more on one side than the other when I'm doing squats? Why do I feel like I have an imbalance? Well, after doing some thinking and some research and investigation, I kind of came to the conclusion of, I think because I grew up dancing, I've always kicked using one side of my body. And so that side of my body has a little bit of an imbalance and less muscular strength because I always use the one side of my body. So that's why I think it's so important to pay attention to your body, pay attention to those cues and those signals your body is sending you, and get curious about it. Seek out a trainer, someone who can help you identify, why is it when I do certain things, when I run, my knees hurt? Maybe it's the food you're eating. Maybe it's inflammation. Maybe your cartilage is starting to break down as you're getting older. Maybe you need to strength train and build the muscles around your knee to help support it. And we'll get into that a little bit in a second. But that was something I identified in my mid to late 20s when I started running more and became a runner. I haven't ran marathons or have done races in a while, but when I was training for that, I was in my mid to late 20s, and I was like, okay, I'm young. Why do I have knee pain? Why do I have issues here? And I found out it's because I did not have the muscle built up around my knees and my quads to support my knees. Now, if you're older, then there may be other reasons, like I said, but start to get curious, start to research, ask, trusted doctors and trainers, why could this be happening? Okay. All right. With all that being said, let's keep moving on. So cardiovascular training is super important for your heart and lung health. This gets the heart pumping. Which think about it, your heart is a muscle. And so the more you work out that muscle, it's going to get stronger. So doing cardiovascular training is going to strengthen your heart. It also circulates oxygen through your body. Now, strength training is beneficial for building muscles to support your bones and your joints. Just like I had mentioned about the running thing, that I built the muscle on my legs, around my knees, and so when I run, I do not have pain like I used to. Now, sometimes I have tightness because what's that called? Not my QL, that's my back. The IT band. My IT band sometimes can get a little tight and pull on my knee up to my hip. And so that's why it's important to, all this stuff. There's a reason why trainers have you doing all these things of like cooling down, stretching. It's so important because you can get tight if you're not stretching. So for me, my IT band was tight and I have to roll that out. But anyway, strength training, beneficial for building muscle to support bones, and it has less of an impact on your joints because it is low impact. You're not pounding on your knees or your feet, you're lifting weights, you're strength training, and it's less impact on your joints. So as we get older, I don't know if I've talked about that. I try and talk about this in all platforms, Instagram, my membership, all the places. So I don't know if I've mentioned this in the podcast or not. But as we get older, we lose our muscle, and that can lead to injury. And so we want to make sure that we are training, strengthening our muscles, building muscles. So as we get older and we start to lose it, we're still maintaining our muscle mass, which also, I know many people know this, in that as we get older, we lose our bone density as well. Think about your bones shed a layer. I think it's over 40. Don't quote me on that. I did not look that up and do the research. But your bones start to lose a layer. So when you strength train, you're building up your bone density. You're building up that layer. And so strength training can help reduce the risk of osteoporosis. And as we get older, help us not break our bones or have brittle bones as we get older. Okay. So which is superior, cardio or strength training? Y'all, it depends on your goals. It really depends. It depends on your goals. There are endurance trainers out, or maybe runners, people training out there who are going to lean more to the cardiovascular side because they are training for something specific. Now, a good coach would have them strength training as well because it's going to help them in their running. It's going to help them in their endurance training as well. But for overall health, I would say research says both. Both are great for overall health. We need to strengthen our heart. We need to help our lungs in doing the cardiovascular training, but we also need to strength train to continue to build muscle mass, strengthen our bone density, stay strong. So as we get older, we can lift things. We can kind of live a life of not on our own, but not having to depend on other people to help us. Just quality of life is kind of what I think about. A well-rounded training program will have both in there. You want to keep your heart healthy while maintaining or building muscle. But many people want to know, well, which is superior for fat loss? So many people, I know you might be out there and you're like, okay, well, I want to see my muscles more. I want to lose weight. And so the question that people ask is, well, what should I do? Should I do cardiovascular training to lose weight or have fat loss? Or should I do strength training? It does go back to both, but if you want to see your muscles, you have to build your muscles. So many people call it toned. They want that toned look, which I cringe at that word, but I digress. It's okay if you use that word. But so many people want that toned look. Toned look comes from building muscle, strengthening muscle. Cardiovascular training is not going to build muscle in the sense of, hey, it's going to help. Like if you're running, think about running. Yes, you are strengthening your leg muscles. But if you want to see your biceps, your shoulders, you're going to have to strength train. When it comes to fat loss, the more muscle, the better. And the only way to get more muscle is to strength train, okay? And here's what I want you to think about, okay? When we do cardio, majority of us tend to stay in a moderate, like zone 2 category where the heart rate doesn't really get up past like 60 to 70% max heart rate. There, of course, are positive health benefits to training in this zone. So don't get me wrong, like we need to do more zone 2. But when it comes to fat loss, or the fat burning zone, zone 2 is not typically going to get us in that place, okay? Zone 2 is great, and I feel like we need to do more of it just in general, as far as we talked about this a while ago in another podcast, but with the NEAT movement, right? Non-exercise activity thermogenesis, in that we're just moving more. We need to move more throughout the day. But it's not necessarily a fat burning zone when it comes down to it, okay? So yes, we do need zone 2, but that's not going to be that fat burning zone, okay? So when it comes to losing weight, it's more of a reduction in body mass while also increasing the percentage of lean muscle mass. Developing lean muscle tissue can only be accomplished from lifting weights, okay? We want muscle hypertrophy, goodness, which hypertrophy is muscle gain. We want to gain muscle, where a lot of times when people are doing lots of cardio, maybe they're maintaining their leg muscles from running, but commonly what occurs with a lot of cardio is atrophy or loss of muscle. So the greater you enhance your muscle hypertrophy, the more fat loss that will occur. Okay, so some people will argue that muscle hypertrophy can occur by doing plyometrics or sprints, which activates the same response you get from weightlifting. But there is some merit to this, but, don't count on that as your only source of exercise. Okay, these modalities can place a lot of stress on your joints and stuff, where, like we talked about earlier, strength training is not putting as much because you're not doing that heavy pounding on your knees, or even like in push-ups if you're doing plyometric push-ups or something like that. And not a lot of people, are able to do that. I feel like most people can pick up a dumbbell, whether it's 5, 3, 10, 15, and they can lift that. They can strength train that or work their way up to that. So the safest, most effective way to lose fat is to lift weights. Okay? Why? Why is this? A recent study from Stanford University looked at nearly 200 people who underwent a 9-month exercise routine of strength training, cardio, or both. They found that the strength training group saw more benefits by doing exercises like shoulder presses, leg presses 3 times a week than the group that worked out on the treadmill, elliptical, or stationary bike. Specifically, the strength training group had more stable blood sugar levels and also gained muscle while losing fat, which is also known as body recomposition. Also think about this. The more muscle mass you have, the higher your metabolic rate tends to be. So the more muscle you have also helps your body burn more fat than muscle, which is important if you want to lose weight and keep your strength. So if you build muscle, you can speed up your metabolism and burn more fat when you exercise. That is coming from Beaumont Health. So, conclusion is strength training for fat loss is superior than cardiovascular training. However, I think it is important to have a well-rounded training program that includes strength training, yes, building muscles, upper body, lower body, full body, all over your body, but also maybe once a week, twice a week, doing some type of cardiovascular training, like a steady state or HIIT training, interval training, so you can work on your heart health as well. Okay, so a well-rounded training program will have a little bit of everything. Now, going back to what I said before, movement in itself is great and it's beneficial. And if you are moving your body how you feels good for you and works best for you and your routine and your schedule, keep doing that. Try to get in more movement throughout your day and incorporate strength training. There are so many more or other benefits to strength training than just fat loss, right? Because some people, they don't want to just, I need to lose weight. Some people just want to be strong, just want to lift weights and build muscle. And so think about this, okay? So number one, we already said strength training builds and helps you maintain muscle mass. Okay, it helps make your joints stronger, helps support your bones and your joints, even just in your everyday routine. It's low impact. It can help you with mood and help you feel better and your mental health. It can improve your cardiovascular health. Listen, I think I put out a reel one time that if people say, strength training isn't cardiovascular, and I was out of breath. I had just gotten done lifting weights and I was out of breath and my heart was pumping. I'm like, okay, this is cardio. So yes, strength training can be a form of cardiovascular health. If your heart rate is getting up, if you are out of breath, yes, you are still working on your heart. You're still training and strengthening your heart. We've already talked about the bone health. It's another great benefit for strength training. And, it can just help you have a better quality of life. So, for example, and I think I said this earlier in the podcast, but if you have a neighbor and they need help moving boxes or moving some furniture, if you are strength training, you are more likely to say yes because you are able to go and do that. Say you have, listen, there's a joke online about when people look at me, I want them to say, wow, she must be able to carry all her groceries in one trip, which is just a funny meme, but it's also true in that I want to be able to, especially as I get older, continue, and not in a prideful way, but continue to do things for myself. I want to be able to do simple tasks of carrying in my groceries. I want to be able to move boxes in my house or move clothing or pick something up off the ground without feeling like I'm super out of breath or out of shape when doing so. I want to be able to, I'll give you this example. I'm sure my mother would not mind because she tells me to share this with people. But when she had my oldest daughter. She was watching her when we were in the hospital with my son. She took her for a walk around the block, and she realized just how out of breath she was, how out of shape she was, because she wasn't really exercising. And so she started having a well-rounded training program, right? She started lifting weights again and running and moving her body. And she always tells me to tell my clients or tell anyone I come across of, one, it's never too late to begin again. It's never too late. And two, if you are doing it, don't stop, because it's harder to get back into it. And three, it has helped her in her energy and being able to keep up with her grandkids. Now, her grandkids are older, and so they're not running around like they used to. But when they were younger, when my kids were younger, she wanted to be that grandma that could walk around the block, that could keep up with her grandkids. And I want that for myself, and I want that for you too, that as you get older, you can play with your grandkids. You can get up and down off the floor without having to have help or feel like you just ran a marathon. Okay. So all that to say is that yes, for fat loss, yes, strength training is superior, but a well-balanced training program will have strength training and some cardiovascular training in there as well. For me, I mostly do strength training, but the things I love and enjoy, which is strength training too, but I love CrossFit it's just something I look forward to, and I only do it one day a week because it is a lot of, heavy, hard lifting, and it can be hard on your joints. And so I do it once a week, and it's something I just look forward to. And then I run once, sometimes twice a week, because I just enjoy it. I enjoy getting my heart rate up and doing that zone 2 steady state cardio. It's good for my heart health, but it's just a time I look forward to connecting with God or listening to a sermon or a podcast that is filling my spiritual tank. And then the rest of the week, I strength train. Now, like I prefaced before, just because it works for me and that is something I'm doing doesn't mean that you should be doing it or everyone else should be doing it. Okay. If strength training is just not your jam, pray about it. No, I'm just kidding. But for real, as we get older, you can do body weight strength training, and that's great. But to get stronger, you're going to have to increase your weight at some point. I know I said this in another podcast before, that if you're still lifting the same 5 pounds you did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you probably need to start increasing your weight. That is part of the hypertrophy training, is increasing your weight over time. Okay. All right. I know some of this was a little technical, but I wanted to inform you and help you make decisions for yourself, but also encourage you of, hey, listen, back to the 1 Timothy verse of physical training. It is important. We have goals. We want things we want to achieve. But if that is the main focus, we might need to reevaluate. Matthew says, I can't remember where it is exactly, but it says, seek first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Meaning, seek first God, seek him first, put him first in your life, and everything else will just fall into place. God will help it work out the way it needs to work out. Okay, if you're chasing some unrealistic aesthetic body composition, release your hands and give it to God. Okay, ask him, God, help me to let this go and help me to train for health, for longevity, for wellness, and so I can live sustainably the best, healthiest I can, so I can go and love and serve and be there for others and be there for my grandkids and be able to say yes to maybe a physically challenging task that someone needs me to do. Okay? All right. I love y'all. I hope that helps a little bit. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, reach out to me, leave a comment on this podcast, and I will try and get back to you as quickly as possible. Okay? All right. I love y'all. We'll see you on the next one.